Let's talk about the apps on your phone. You know, the ones you use every single day? We tap, we swipe, we take them for granted. But behind that smooth, simple screen is this entire hidden universe of engineering decisions. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and explore that hidden world.
Right? Have you ever thought about that? You open your favorite app, you scroll a bit, tap a button, and it just works. It feels like magic, but I promise you, it's not magic. That effortless feeling is the end result of thousands of tiny, invisible decisions, a ton of hard work, and some really clever engineering.
You know, the best way to picture an app is to think of it like an iceberg. The part we see and interact with, the slick design, the buttons, the photos, that's just the very tip. But the real bulk of the work, the part that holds everything up, is this massive, invisible structure deep beneath the surface. And today, we're going for a dive.
So, here's our journey. We're going to start at the top with designing the experience you can actually see and touch. Then we'll go deeper into the unseen data engine that powers everything. After that, we'll look at how these apps actually get onto your phone and stay fast. Then we connect all that tech to the business of building. And finally, we'll talk about the most important skill of all, the art of the trade-off.
Okay, let's start at the very top of that iceberg, the user interface, or UI. This is everything you see, everything you can tap. But even here, in the part that seems so simple, there's a whole lot more going on than you'd think.
So for every single screen you look at, an engineer has to design for 4 completely different situations. We usually only see the content state, when all your pictures and posts show up perfectly. But a great app also has to gracefully handle what happens when it's loading, what it looks like when there's nothing to show, and, most importantly, what to do when something goes wrong. Getting those other 3 right is what separates a good app from a frustrating one.
All right, let's take a super common action, searching. You type in a couple of letters, and boom, results just appear. It feels instant. But stop and think for a second. Where is the thinking actually happening? Is it on your phone or somewhere else? This one little question opens up one of the first huge decisions a developer has to make.
And here's the trade-off. You can do the search on your phone itself, that's called client-side. It's blazing fast for small things, like searching your contacts. But can you imagine your phone trying to search every video on YouTube? No way, it would just melt. For that, you need server-side search, which uses a super powerful computer out on the internet. So the choice is always between the instant speed of your phone versus the massive power of a server.
Okay, time to go below the surface. We're diving into the unseen data engine. This is all the hidden plumbing and machinery that has to work perfectly to get that photo, that message, or that news article from some server on the internet all the way to the screen in your hand.
So behind the scenes, there's this little 4-step dance that's happening constantly. First, your app has to ask a server for information. That's the request. The server sends back this raw data, which the app then has to transform into a language it understands. Then it stores some of that data on your phone so it doesn't have to ask again. And finally, it displays it all beautifully on your screen. That little rhythm is the heartbeat of almost every app you use.
But here's a good question. What happens when there is just a ton of data? Think about your social media feed. It feels endless, right? How does the app show you all that stuff without trying to download the entire internet and, completely crashing your phone? Well, the secret is a really clever trick called pagination.
And of course, there's a trade-off here too. The simple way to do it is to just ask for page 3 of the photos. Easy enough. But on a live feed, what's on page 3 right now might be totally different a second from now. You end up seeing the same posts over and over. So the better but harder way is for the app to ask for the next 20 photos after the last one I saw. It's way more complex to build, but it's the only way to get that reliable, stable, infinite scroll we all know.
Okay, and what about using an app offline, like on an airplane? That's all thanks to something called caching, which is just a fancy word for saving data on your phone. And again, a trade-off. Storing data in active memory is ridiculously fast, but as soon as you close the app, poof, it's gone. That's like holding milk in your hands. But storing it on your phone's permanent storage is a bit slower, but it'll be there when you reopen the app. That's like putting the milk in the fridge for later.
So, we've got our UI designed and our data engine all figured out. Now for the really nerve-wracking part. How do we get this incredibly complex machine onto millions of different phones without everything breaking? This section is all about shipping, speed, and stability.
Yeah, the days of just pushing a big red launch button are long gone. Today, releasing a new feature is this very careful step-by-step process. Often, the new code is already in the app, just hidden behind a secret switch called a feature flag.
They can turn it on for just a tiny group of people to test it, and then slowly, gradually roll it out to 1%, then 10%, then 50%, all while watching to make sure nothing breaks.
And when we say an app is fast, that doesn't mean just one thing. It's a whole juggling act. Engineers are constantly balancing how fast the app opens, how much of your data plan it's using, how much battery it's draining, and how smooth the scrolling feels. And here's the kicker. Making one of these better can often make another one worse. It's all about finding the perfect balance to create the best overall experience.
All right, we're going even deeper now, down to the very foundation of the iceberg. This is the part that's almost completely hidden from view, the business of building. Because at the end of the day, every single technical choice, every line of code is there to serve a business goal.
And you can see that direct line right here. If the business priority is to make money, well, the engineers have to build in ways to handle payments. If the goal is to expand into new countries, the tech team has to build features for different languages and cultures. And if the number one priority is just getting a product out the door fast, they might decide to use pre-built code from other companies instead of making everything themselves. Every tech choice is a business choice.
And this quote really nails the central challenge. There's this constant tug of war between what the business needs right now, like a new feature for a marketing launch, and what the app needs to stay healthy and stable for years to come. Getting that balance right might just be the hardest part of the entire job.
And that brings us to our final and, I think, most important part of this journey. We've seen it everywhere, haven't we? In search, in loading data, in performance, in business decisions, this one concept ties everything together and reveals the true art of making great apps.
So you might assume that the best app developers are just the people who are the absolute best at writing code, right? The keyboard wizards. But that's not really the whole story. The single most crucial skill in this entire field, it isn't actually the coding itself.
It's the wisdom to look at a problem, understand all the constraints, time, money, technology, and make a smart, thoughtful trade-off. It's knowing when a quick and simple solution is good enough, and when you need to invest in the complex, long-term one. It's understanding that there's almost never one perfect answer, just the best answer for this app, for these users, for right now. So the next time you tap an icon on your phone and an app springs to life, just take a second. Think about that massive iceberg hiding just beneath your fingertips. Think about all the invisible decisions, the balancing acts, and the smart compromises that had to happen to make it all feel so effortless. What hidden trade-offs will you see now?